Tonight we not only commemorate this day, but also we honor and recognize some of the leading women within our own and amongst us on a global platform. We truly are honored tonight to have amongst us such an esteemed panel: the living legend, Dr. Masuma Hasan herself, the beacon in media, Madam Tasneem Ahmar, and the rising star, Qureshi. Unfortunately, Madam SSP Shahla Qureshi could not join us. She had an emergency meeting in Lahore, and so she had to fly out. She really did try, and she does extend her regards and says that she later on will hold a separate session and would love to come talk to the students and faculty. So I want to also mention that this day is not only significant in us honoring and remembering women, but it's also important for men, just as equally. And I think that's important in this conversation. I hope our panelists will also shed light on that. For our great Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah famously once said, "No nation can rise to the height of glory unless your women are by your side with you." So today it is important for us as a society, both for women and men, this day. Before I continue to open up tonight, I would like to invite Mr. Muhammad Ashar, our fourth-year law student who is Hafiz al-Quran, to please share with us some verses from the Quran, to be joined by Hiba, who will share a translation. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا.
In the name of Allah, the All-Merciful, the Most Compassionate. O mankind, fear your Lord who created you from a single soul, and from it created its mate, and from the two spread abroad a multitude of men and women. Fear Allah, through whom you demand your rights from one another, and sever not the ties of kinship. Surely Allah is ever watchful over you.
Thank you for those words that really highlight tonight and what this conversation will be about inclusion, about gender equity, about the recognition of women. And for one thing in this verse, which I find quite unique and interesting, and those who are students of language, is that the Arabic word used for womb is called rahm, which is pretty interesting because this is the same Arabic Hebrew triliteral root that refers to caring and mercy and having the capacity to bear burden. And what's interesting is that this concept is related to an ever-increasing capacity to forbear pain and struggle and still not break, but to nourish and build and sustain those of them at the same time. What is leadership but that? To take on the burden and yet survive at the same time and carry the others with you forward with care and mercy. This is significant for tonight's topic on women's leadership and resilience. Truly, I tell you, there is in our history many examples where men have broken, but women have prevailed because this God-given strength. Joan of Arc, for example, the spirit of France, where 100 years the French people tried many a times with numerous leaders to gain their liberation, but were unsuccessful. Not just for herself, and not just for women, but for the nation of France. Where Rosa Parks stood up in a bus in the terrible years of the racial segregation in the South of America, in the United States, and became the spark for NAACP, which to this day fights for people's rights, not just women, but men and many people of color. In an interview, she once said, I would have to know for once and for all what rights I had as a human being and as a citizen, not just as a woman. Why do we even have to dip into the history to find examples? when in today's time we have the example of Ariana Huffington, a woman who was rejected 36 times for publication. And finally, when she got published, she was able to establish the first web-based news organization that won a Pulitzer Prize. But why do we even have to go overseas when we can look to our own past and to our own tradition? Right here in Pakistan, we have the esteemed Madre Millat, Fatima Jinnah, who publicly stood up to a dictator when many men failed, and even our courts buckled, and led a nation in an election for freedom. By some accounts, even died in that cause. It was for years after her we had any semblance of any meaningful movement to restore democracy. It just so happened it was another woman who took that charge. Asma Jilani, more famous known for Asma Jahangir, whose name is cemented in our constitutional history, as some of you law students know, in the famous Asma Jilani case versus the government of Punjab in 1972. And a decision that all scholars agreed paved the way forward for the establishment of our current constitution of 1973, where Benazir Bhutto became the first woman prime minister in the Islamic world, a height of symbolic progress not even witnessed in most advanced of nations. From their struggles, we can hope to achieve those lessons of wisdom to grow. For us tonight, we honor not only those women, but those amongst us now, and hear from them and their guidance to nourish us in our progress forward, individually and collectively. For there is no success without women being by our side if we are to achieve our true goal in life. Without further ado, I would like to share a short video about tonight on Athena40 and the amazing women behind it, including the Global Thinkers Forum, a London-based organization that has been working on women leadership for over a decade, connecting women from all over the world.
Welcome to Athena40. Athena40 is a family of initiatives that promote female leadership and invite all leaders to embrace visionary and innovative thinking. By innovative thinking, we mean being open, curious, and solutions-focused. Athena40 works closely with some of the most dynamic and innovative minds across all industries in order to promote gender diversity, inclusion, and bring more women into decision-making roles. We commit to enabling women to contribute to our economies. We believe that compassion and understanding are necessary values for our societies. We promote partnerships and ideas exchange among women, and of course, we include men in all conversations. We fight cliches and tribalism. We propose collaboration instead of segregation. We ignore labels and stereotypes. We recognize the value of diversity as a fantastic source of talent and knowledge. We stand for freedom of thought and expression. Our language speaks the truth. We stand for values-based decision-making, and we fight polarization. We are broad-minded and inclusive. We believe in meaningful networking and the need to keep lifting each other up. We mentor, inspire, and motivate other women of all ages and backgrounds, helping them discover their own potential. We share and learn from each other's stories. Athena40 welcomes everyone who wishes to be part of our mission and initiatives, an international community of vision, an ongoing global conversation, a movement for compassionate, innovative, future-proof leadership. Join us.
That was a brief introduction about that, and without further ado, I'd like to invite to the podium someone who would speak about what Athena and Athena40 is. And as most of you may know, and those of you may not know, Athena40 is it's a organization that was inspired by the Greek mythological figure, the goddess Athena. And she famously once said, "Some of the words will find within yourself, and the rest, some power will inspire you to say." The inspiration for Athena40 and the Global Thinkers Forum that has inspired many women for over a decade could only best be described by one of its founding members, Madam Attiya Mahmood, who is the founding representative for Pakistan, a former diplomat and ambassador to Pakistan. Ma'am Attiya Mahmood has served as a member of the Pakistan Foreign Service for over 35 years, serving in Morocco, Jordan, and Indonesia, and also she served in Canada, Turkey, the Philippines, and the United Kingdom. Please, ma'am, if you may, share us your thoughts on this initiative on Athena40. Ladies and gentlemen, Ambassador Attiya Mahmood.
Thank you, Muaz. Dear distinguished guests, Mr. Martin Dawson, I'm delighted to welcome the panelists here today, and sorry that one of them could not join us for some emergency reasons. So allow me to give you a brief description of Athena40, the organization that I represent and which is putting together this international conversation today, and it has been doing so for the last 4 years on 8th of March. Athena40 was launched in UNESCO on the International Women's Day in 2018 as a women-led platform promoting the work of courageous women and innovative women from around the world. It has been the vision of the founder, Elizabeth Filippoli, to create a platform that can amplify the voices of women across different cultures. Within less than 5 years and against a global pandemic, Athena40 developed into a family of initiatives focusing on strengthening the role of women worldwide and nurturing accountable leadership. Pakistan has been part of the initiative since 2019, when we first held the conversation in Lahore. The second one was held in Karachi in 2020 on the eve of the COVID shutdown. The 2021 third conversation was also held online from Karachi. We are glad that this year we are having a live event, our fourth, also from Karachi. I think we need to move away from Karachi. At this very moment, some 50 leading women are part of this event with an audience of more than 1,000 influencers from Africa, Asia, Europe, Middle East, and the US, debating live. UK. Not the US, but the UK. The conversation in London is hosted at the Conduit Club, and we will soon connect with them. In such an uncertain world, we are looking to see how women act as catalysts for resilience, diversity, and change, and to see where the major challenges and opportunities for women lie, and how can women promote peace and collaborate while getting on decision-making positions. We have just watched a brief video on what Athena is about, and we can now begin our maybe the keynote address. So I'll let Muaz take over from here, and I thank you again for joining us, and especially the panelists for coming to give us their point of view and to make us more wiser in so many ways. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the introduction on Athena40 and Global Thinkers Forum. As this initiative started in London, I can't help but recall the words of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. In a speech she gave to her people, she said, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." That message and spirit of inclusivity has connected many cities together under Athena40, in the past as we will do tonight. We are honored today by a representative from Her Majesty's service, Mr. Martin Dawson. He has spent nearly 30 years focused on international development, working with the Department for International Development, DFID, which focuses on funding many projects and research around the world, including on women's rights issues and women leadership. He has also served in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, where he spent most of his time overseas in Asia, including South Asia, Africa, and the Caribbean. He's currently serving as the Deputy Head of Mission at the British High Commission in Karachi. Mr. Dawson, if you would please do us the honor to share us your thoughts on women leadership and some of the initiatives you and the mission are engaged in, around this focal area. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Martin Dawson.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Hasan, distinguished guests. It's a real pleasure to be invited here today. I'm Martin Dawson, the Deputy Head of Mission of the Deputy High Commission here in Karachi, so I'm known locally as the Deputy's Deputy. So if you see me, that's how I'm being referred to, which is absolutely fantastic. I would just say a few words because I think we'll get this part over because I think the interesting stuff is coming later. That's what we really want to get involved in. I just wanted to also just to endorse the opening remarks from Mr. Shah. I think it's very nice to see all the men here. And I think it's very important we remember that, and it's important that the men are engaged and we actually take some action as well. It is International Women's Day. I'm very impressed by the aims and objectives of Athena40. I think those values and the statement that was just presented in that short film is everything we should all be living up to. I think that's fantastic when we talk about leadership, empowerment, and diversity and inclusion. So I just wanted to endorse that as well. I mean, from our point of view, as the UK government, obviously that's who I'm representing. And I was just going to also, sorry, I'm jumping around a bit here because things are going on in my mind. It's the international development mind in my head. But I thought it was very interesting you were highlighting a number of women who'd made quite an impression. And I'm not divulging my politics here, but there's one lady that had a significant impact on my life and the opportunities I had. And that was Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. The impact that she had in the UK in the 1980s, I know, and as I say, it's not my political colours, but as a result of what she did and how she changed Britain in the 80s, I benefited from that as an individual, and I'm hoping that others, including women, benefited from that too. So I just wanted to flag that. There's lots of people out there, when you suddenly start to think about, okay, who's had an impact on my life? Certainly that lady had a big impact on mine, and I later joined her government. Not because I had a political affiliation, but I just had the opportunities that I got, the education I wanted, the opportunity was there, and I had the opportunity to join the government. That's just an aside. But certainly for today, International Women's Day is a huge priority for the British government, goes without saying. Internally, our theme, and I hope you've seen it on some of our Twitter messages and other grams, has been break the bias. So you should have seen some crossed arms, hopefully, out there. And if not, you'll see them tweeted out very soon. Because that's our global narrative within the British government, break the bias. And within that, we're tackling, it's another global call to tackle discrimination, to celebrate our differences and forge an equal future for everyone. International Women's Day is an important day for the UK. We're increasing our efforts around the world to support women, end discrimination, embrace and celebrate our differences. This is probably my 6th engagement in the last 4 days related to International Women's Day, and I've had a great time. I've been engaged with agripreneurs. This is women who are based in or working on agricultural projects at very much grassroots level, the impact they've had within their own societies to be engaged in actually farming agriculture. But in order for them to then produce things to sell, and the next step is hopefully to form a cooperative, that's had a huge impact not only on their personal lives but on the lives of their families and their children as well. So that's just one example. I went to a ladies' fund function to celebrate women in Pakistan, the award winners for 2022. Again, highly dynamic women, just like the panel you'll be hearing from this evening, who are really influential, drivers of change, women entrepreneurs and successful, and having a huge impact in what's going on here in Pakistan. I've also, yesterday, was at the State Bank for the Financial Inclusion Programme, which again is a great initiative, and I take my hat off to what's going on here in Pakistan, here in Karachi, in particular the State Bank, that's driving some real change. It's a simple, you may have heard of it, Hasan, I think it's called, if that's the right, and it's a mobile app that gives you, a lady demonstrated yesterday as part of the event, it took her 13 minutes to open a bank account on that app. I know that there's still barriers to those sorts of things, that it's not an answer to all the problems, but those sorts of initiatives go a long way to having a huge impact. So again, I take my hat off to that. And then finally, I drew yesterday to a close hosting an event for the Women's Development Foundation in Pakistan, which was addressing issues around community-based activities, focusing on peace building, to tackle some of the issues around discrimination and violence against women and girls. So, and this is just today is just another event adding to those important issues. I'll wrap up very, very soon. My hope is soon there will be no need for a Women's Day, and every day will be Women's Day. I mean, March the 8th is important, but I'm hopeful when I come to the end of my career, we won't need it. It'll just be every day will be Women's Day. I hope you agree with me on that one. I mean, as we know, clearly the stakes are high. COVID-19 has had a huge impact, and particularly had a significant impact on the gains that we've made over the last 20 years in girls' education. In fact, I've heard that in 2 years of a pandemic, that's probably wiped out the 20 years progress we've made, which is awful. So we've really got to focus on getting those gains back. We know that women and girls are disproportionately impacted by climate change, natural disasters, and conflict in particular. And I raised that with my group yesterday, because those sorts of issues just exacerbate the inequalities that we already face. And certainly 80% of people displaced by natural disasters are women and children, and such disasters and their subsequent impacts on average kill more women than men, or kill women at an earlier age. And these things we've just got to address. So much is at stake, but it's important that with tireless determination we continue to promote women and girls' rights, help unleash the potential they have and wherever they live. We've, as a UK, has pledged to stand up for the right of every girl to 12 years of quality education, and that's linked to my other points, particularly about the pandemic. And we're leading to change to accelerate the pace of a global education recovery that all girls can benefit from quickly. So that's our response. Alongside that, and related to, I think, a little more to this evening's event, is we want to work to ensure education and skills for girls are more relevant to the future labour market needs. Okay, so looking ahead. Just one final point, and I'd be remiss of me not to, with my colleague from the Department for International Trade sitting there, if I don't mention the private sector, and particularly, again, as it's relevant to entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in particular, that the UK firms in Pakistan have traditionally enjoyed a reputation of being very women-friendly, focused on their policies and the way they operate, and I know are celebrated as employers of choice. But we would like UK firms in Pakistan to lead by example and set industry benchmarks for an inclusive and more gender-balanced working environment. Whilst we're encouraged to see many female representation at senior levels by many female colleagues in UK businesses operating here, we shouldn't feel complacent. There's still more to be done. So I'm really looking forward to tonight's event. I think it's quite imaginative, but also fantastic to draw around all these places around the world for the debate tonight. And I'm sorry that I can't stay with you all night. As I say, it's International Women's Day, and I've got a number of events to attend this evening for more short speeches. But I'll just conclude, and it's this quote I've given to the gentleman for the press release. I just wanted to close by saying we must bear in mind that really only when there is investment in women as workers, as leaders, as entrepreneurs and consumers, then we can say the whole world benefits. Thank you for the invitation. I'm very grateful. I wish you all the best this evening, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you for your thoughts, good sir. I look forward to connecting with you and your team to see where the synergies between your mission and our university can work together to achieve these progressive measures, particularly focused around the youth and girls' education. As I know, various members of our department are keen to develop an ever-growing relationship in that respect with research and projects. I would like to actually, at this moment, because Mr. Dawson has to attend another event, present you with a token on behalf of the university for joining us. Ambassador Attiya Mahmood, if you could please grace us with the stage and present it to Mr. Dawson. He has to run, like he said, so I've asked him if he could give us this 5 minutes to have that.
That most of the female ambassadors in the UK's biggest missions, Washington, New York, the biggest missions, Washington, New York, Paris, are now headed up by female ambassadors. Isn't that fantastic? And most of the cohorts that I was trained with to come to this position, we had a DHM and a head of mission training course. Most of my colleagues on that course, and that's fantastic. All there by merit. Fantastic.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming, for joining. This is a little gift bag.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll depart now.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. We'll meet.
You'll be in touch.
Yes. Quaid-e-Azam once said in a speech to women of Pakistan, "You have given many sacrifices for Pakistan, a country which would only now have accepted as a reality. You will have to go one step forward. That day is not far when nations of the world will praise Pakistan." To bring us closer to that day, I would like to welcome our panelists who too have given sacrifices to share their thoughts to bring us one step forward. Dr. Masuma Hasan. Honestly, there's no words that can really do justice to introduce her. She's a living legend. Previously serving as a Pakistani diplomat, she also was the secretary to the government of Pakistan in the cabinet division, and later ambassador of Pakistan to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. She also served as ambassador to Austria, Slovenia, and Slovakia, and even chaired the Group 77, leading 77 non-allied nations in the United Nations. She currently serves as the chairperson of the Pakistan Institute for International Affairs, the PIIA, the oldest think tank in Pakistan that has continuously published a quarterly journal called the Pakistan Horizon since 1948. I am truly honored she is here tonight amongst us. Madam Tasneem Ahmar, a privilege tonight to be joined by Ma'am, a seasoned media professional for over 25 years working as a journalist by profession, but also as an advocate on gender equity, women and human rights, gender sensitization, and media monitoring. She is the founder of the UKS Research Centre, a research, resource and publication centre dedicated to the cause for gender equality and women development. Through her extensive experience as a journalist, she is well placed in the industry to highlight the ethical concerns and gaps. Unfortunately, we are not, SSP Shahla Qureshi has not joined us, but our next panelist is Dr. Sarah Qureshi, who brings new meaning to the sky is the limit in achievements. She is the CEO of Aero Engine Craft, the first private aviation company in Pakistan that focuses on environment-friendly aircraft engines. Dr. Qureshi designed a contrail-free aero engine with added features that reduces the carbon footprint to counter global warming. She has achieved the success of the model in the laboratory, but plans on taking it to the skies in Pakistan in phase 2 of the project with a plane. She's been recognized as one of the 12 finalists in the Study UK Alumni Awards of 2020. Thank you all, ladies, for joining us tonight, and a big round of applause. Now I just have to do a technical thing here to connect us to them. So if I may, just give me 1 second.
Thanks, Amelia, for having me here. My name is Dina. I'm 31. I'm a mom and I'm Ukrainian. Right now I'm staying in my home city, Vinnytsia, which is only 270 kilometers away from Kyiv, and it's kind of safe here now. This is my home, the house built by my dad, and the place where I feel the most loving and loved. And after having studied and done internships and working in different countries in Europe and in the US, I decided to go back home, and to some of my peers, this decision seemed a little bit too crazy and ridiculous back then, because I could have pursued my career in any international organization or company like the UN or Google, but my choice and my heart was here because Ukraine has splendid career opportunities, amazing, talented, hardworking, well-educated people, and I like to be a part of it, and I belong here. That's why my choice was like this. And on Sunday, I was just outside with my baby, breathing some air, as I heard the air raid siren followed by some noise, and I thought this was just the aircraft, which I heard before, but it turned out it was a missile targeting the airport right on the outskirts of my city. As a result, 9 people died and the airport was destroyed entirely. And as of now, 38 children were killed in this work. The youngest of them was just 18 months, and it all started in cities like Kharkiv and Kyiv with the shelling and attacking the military facilities and infrastructure. And the next step was the civilian infrastructure like hospitals, kindergartens, and schools and residential areas. And God, I want to be wrong, but I have this nasty feeling that my home city is just one step closer to being shelled in its every corner. And honestly, I don't want to be a refugee, either this +1 to the dreadful statistics of the killed people. And that's why my Ukrainian fellows, the army, the president, volunteers did everything possible and impossible in order to have peace and security and life as we knew it. But it's not only fight for us Ukrainians, it's honestly the fight for whole Europe and the world, because there is no peace and security with no free, sovereign and independent Ukraine. On the 9th of May, we used to celebrate this Victory Day, claiming never again, but the thing is that the history repeated itself, and there is another crazy dictator with super huge ego and ambitions. And unless we stop him right sooner than the May 9th, the consequences may be just awful, as too many people are being killed of my people, Ukrainians. And you know, my son's name is Ziauddin, as mentioned before, and in my language, it consists of 2 words meaning Ziauddin and Slava, which is celebration and glory. And I do hope that way sooner than May, we're going to have every family in my country going to have a huge and happy celebration of free Ukraine, thanks to the glory of my brave and committed people. Slava Ukraini, glory to Ukraine. Дякую.
Slava Ukraini, thank you.
Yes, I mean, we had so many obstacles and challenges, starting with the Orange Revolution and the Revolution of Dignity and then Crimea and Donbass and everything. And maybe the lesson was not learned well enough for us and for the rest of the world, that we have those values that we stand for. And no matter what, we have to be united as a society. And whenever we have the truth behind us, we have to stand for it till the very end. And what we see now in my country, like everyone is so hyper motivated and patriotic, doing every single day little tiny things that everyone can do within his or her capacity, but at the end of the day, it all brings us the spirit of shared values and the spirit of upcoming victory. And honestly, I haven't met a person who has any doubt in the victory, because that wasn't us invading our country. We did nothing to the Russian Federation and Mr. Putin himself. So every help that we get, external help, just mobilizes our efforts. And thanks to that, we feel as strong as never before.
Thank you. Well, please prevail. Please stay strong as you are, and once again, as you are. Thank you, Nana.
Thank you.
And now it's time to make well, a bit like the Eurovision was back in the artist, we're back to the next with keeping standard. Is that right? Is that goals there?
No, they know. They're connecting to Zagreb first. Yeah, there he is.
They can connect.
Yeah, they know. We're connected. They're letting her, the Ukrainian person, speak. That's why.
नहीं, वीडियो नहीं आपको ऑन करना है।
नहीं, वो करने नहीं दे, किसी को भी नहीं करने देंगे, वो एक-एक करेंगे.
Right, hello. Well, welcome to West London, and this is the offices of the Evening Standard, and with the support of the London Press Club. And you can see about me here a panel, and we have a panel of five, and we're being chaired by Carol Stone, who is a former BBC producer, and we have the executive editor, Dawn, of the Society of Editors. We have Nimco Ali, a columnist, well known for her campaigning, and we have Anna here, and Anna is content editor of the Evening Standard. So all of these panelists are very much supporters of the ethos of today, and hopefully will be sorting the world's view accordingly in the next hour or so. So good luck to every panel, and the Conduit Club to all over the world. So good luck, and thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Good luck to you. You have fantastic panelists, panel of media executives there, and we're moving on to Zagreb, Croatia, where the panel is moderated by Aero, the CEO of the Story Group. Diana, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Great. Well, hello London, and actually hello Carol, who actually sits on the board of the Montessori Group, so I'm delighted to see her chairing the Evening Standard panel as well. Here in Zagreb, we actually have an invited audience, quite a large invited audience, which is lovely. And on my panel, we have Jennifer from ITRAS, which is a wellness and health organisation that works with women to empower women. We have Christina from KPMG Croatia, Ivana, who is the CEO of the Zagreb Stock Exchange, Victoria, who's head of EBRD here in Croatia. We have Mila, who is one of our young change makers of the future. We have the very acclaimed artist Oko, who actually shows in London as well as in Croatia. We have Athena from UNICEF, head of UNICEF here in Croatia. And we have Carla from Solidarna, which is one of the leading NGOs here in the country as well. We're delighted to join all the other panels, including my other colleague Max, who I know is also in London, and we are looking forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Already, you have a rockstar round table there. Thank you, and we'll come back to you about 55 minutes now. Let's move on to Beirut, where our Institute of Women and its director next year is sharing a panel of many grassroots activists. Miriam, can you hear us? We can see you. I don't think of hearing theirs, but there's one from Ahmar. And Ahmar, Jordan hears, we will try to connect with Vegas all the time, and then we will try Beirut again. There's Inchaz, hears. In Jordan, I see everyone ready to know what it is. The conversation is fantastic. Hello, and then
Please cross all of your own words. Excuse me 1 second. Hi everybody, we're broadcasting from Amman, Jordan. Can you hear us?
yes, we can. Hello, Penny.
Hi Elizabeth, how are you?
Okay, good. Happy International Women's Day. Would love to know who are you guys.
Absolutely, we have a stellar panel today of amazing women from diverse backgrounds. We have Masuma behind it, who's the founder of Masuma Architects. Reem Hasan, who has multiple roles, but we have her down as the president of the Jordanian Society for Protecting Family Violence Victims. Hasan, the resident representative of UNDP Jordan. Shireen Hasan, who's the co-founder of Bunny Coffee, an entrepreneur with us. And Dan Soyal, who's the CEO of Mamlaka TV.
That's great. Thank you. And so you have already started with the organization, so we're looking forward to coming back about. Thank you, and a big thank you to Rita for working us for the 4th year. And now we're going to Dubai. And Hannah near us. Our panel there is I here in Mexico 2020. And Sharon is social entrepreneur and charities. And
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, and welcome everyone. We are super excited to be here with you today from Dubai Expo 2020 at the UK Pavilion. I have some amazing women. We're all trying to help each other with the fabulous women we have with us today. First of all, happy International Women's Day to everyone with us. Today we have Caroline Faraj, who is the VP of CNN Arabic Services. We've got Diana Hamadi, who is the founder of Diana Hamadi Attorneys at Law. We have Sudan Schoolmeyer, who is the VP of Communications at Talabat, delivery hero for the international community. We have Roshana Shurizek, who is an entrepreneur, and she's the founder of Possible X. And we have Fatima Amin, who's a security specialist from Bahrain Petroleum Company. So a very diverse group of people, fabulous women, and I'm super excited to be with everyone today. Thank you so much.
thank you, Patty. I'm trying to connect today with I hope we're getting this time here. And if not, we will move on to that. Miriam, can you hear us?
Yes. You muted me. Yeah. No, I'm here. I was just unmuted. Okay. Hi, hello, Elizabeth, everybody in London and elsewhere. Good evening, everybody. I'm glad you did that special session with the Ukrainian female to discuss that. I hope next year you will also consider some of the females across the world in Kashmir and Palestine as well to share their thoughts. Good evening. I am Syed Muaz Shah, Director at the Center for Human Rights at Ziauddin University in the Faculty of Law, Politics and Governance. I will host and moderate of the Pakistan panel being hosted by Ziauddin Live. We are joined by members of the public, student and faculty, as you can see here. And I'm also joined by our panelists, starting from the left, Dr. Masuma Hasan, who is a seasoned diplomat, not only served as an ambassador to Austria, Slovenia, and Slovakia on behalf of Pakistan, but also as the chair for the Group of 77 in the United Nations and represented Pakistan in the International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA. She currently serves as the chairperson for the Pakistan Institute for International Affairs, the PIIA, the leading and oldest think tank in Pakistan. We also are joined by Dr. Qureshi, who's sitting in the middle. She is Sarah Qureshi, who traveled all the way here from Islamabad to be with us, Elizabeth. She's the CEO of Aero Engine Aircraft, the first private aviation company in Pakistan that focuses on environmental friendly aircraft engines. She has a successful pilot, and she's going in phase 2 to take it to the skies in an actual plane. And last but not least, we have Tasneem Ahmar, who's the last of our panelists here. She's a veteran with over 25 years of experience in the media, not only as a journalist, but as an advocate for women's rights, gender equity, gender sensitization, and media monitoring. She's the founder of UKS, a research, resource, and publication center dedicated to the cause of gender equity and equality and women development. So, Elizabeth, we'll connect with you then here in a little bit to share our thoughts.
We'll be back about 55 minutes to hear what the main findings and calls for action from Pakistan are. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Miriam, we're trying to connect with you. Yes, but it sounds well, it seems, appears to be a very engaging conversation. But
Hi, Elizabeth, I'm here.
Great.
I'm very sorry about that. I had to interrupt my guest. So hello everyone, I'm connecting from Beirut. We're at the Aero Institute for Women at the Lebanese American University. We have exceptional change makers with us who are sharing their stories, and I'm very sorry that I had to interrupt them. And their insightful deliberations today. So I have with me Reem Madran, who's a university student and the founder of Girl Up Lebanon, and she's a student of ours here at Aero. I have Rachel Weeks with me, who's the head of UN Women Lebanon, and basically a partner of the Aero Institute for Women. We work closely with UN Women. I have Dalal Mawad, who was an independent award-winning Lebanese journalist. She currently works for CNN and teaches at Sciences Po in Paris. And I have Naya Dari, who is another colleague of ours. She's currently working with us, and she is co-founder of Harass Tracker, an initiative to fight the normalization of sexual harassment in Lebanon. So this is our panel, and we're having an interesting discussion, and we're going to leave you now to continue the discussion. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Miriam. You Lebanese women are role models, and we admire and respect you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And now let's move back to London, and from Lady Montessori, NCI, and Max Pescatore.
Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, Elizabeth. Hello, everybody. Max Pescatore, I'm CEO of MCI, Montessori Group. In keeping with the international status of our group, we work not only in the UK but internationally. My panelists also reflect not only London but also 3 other counties within England. And we have one panelist sitting in Rome and the other in Dubai. And they are Molly Kingsley, who is a journalist in the UK and also co-founder of an organisation called Us For Them, started in the pandemic to represent the voice of children, particularly if they were experiencing or not experiencing education as we went through that time. Marie Chowdhury, who is sitting in Dubai, UK qualified lawyer, now a fintech and finance specialist, and she's General Counsel for Lead Technologies. Annie Garthwaite, after many years as international corporate comms leader, is now an acclaimed novelist here in the UK. Joan Waswick, sitting in Rome, has spent all of her working career as an international corporate comms executive leader. She's also a guest lecturer and mentors students. And Catherine McLeod, who is the CEO of Dingy's Promise, which is a group of nurseries in the UK that specialise in children with special educational needs. But she herself is a passionate advocate and very active in that field, and in fact got her MBE awarded to her for work she did in Asia around 10, 15, 20 years ago. I'm delighted to have them all on my panel today.
Thank you. We're delighted to have you with us, and thank you for hosting for a second year. And now let's move on to Birmingham, which, as you can see, is a very young panel. Hello, Neely.
Hi everyone, hi Elizabeth. Thank you very much for joining us from Birmingham, as you said. I'm here with the debate and I'm being joined by 6 incredible young women from the George Dixon Academy, which is a school local to the centre where we are today. The names of the students with me are Joanna, Amelia, Amandi, Michaela, Sophia and Karina, and we're really excited to contribute to this conversation and give a youth perspective on how women can really act as catalysts for resilience, diversity, and change.
Wonderful. Well, please use yourselves now, and we'll be learning about introducing by this, see how the conversations go, and then I'll ask you to be those the main panelists. It's fantastic to have you all. I can now say that it costs you to get back to university, so I promise I will not get you back from those for another time, and thank you. So, if you can have the slides on screen. Welcome, ladies.
Are we completed? Can we go on mute? Sorry about that. These technical things can get a little bit. Finally, now that we're done with that, let's get back on. Always a technical issue with that. So thank you. Sorry for that little bit back and forth. I thought it was not depoliticized, but I guess it got politicized by surprise. I did not know that that was going to happen, but I'm glad I was able to share, I think, a sentiment that all of us share in this room as well, that there are many women across this world who do not get a voice, and what's happening in Ukraine is a concern. There's no doubt about it. But there are many women who have not been highlighted, who have been facing these things for many years. And I think that's something that is unfortunate. There's been singularity, but it's actually multi-dimensional. I hope to perhaps speak and encourage people and others speak in other locations, and so forth. So, without further ado, Dr. Masuma, I would like to actually start off with you and a general question. And this first question is basically dealing with, your own story, a personal struggle. As a woman leader, particularly, I can imagine in the United Nations with so many leaders from all over the world, and you being there and leading Pakistan, how you dealt with that specific story or that specific challenge that ended up. So is there something that you could share with us, some snippet of your life, that one moment that really kind of is defining when it comes to women leadership and the challenges that they face, particularly as an international diplomat?
Thank you, Muaz. Because this is International Women's Day, with respect to the importance of that day, I will deflect your question a little bit. And the one important event in my life relates not to my status as a diplomat, but to my whatever leadership qualities I had to help to empower women. Apart from being Chairperson of the Pakistan Institute of International Affairs, I am also President of Aero Foundation. And Aero Foundation is one of the leading women's empowerment organizations in Pakistan. It has been struggling for women's empowerment since 1986. I have been on their board since the beginning, since 1986. I was their treasurer, and today I have the privilege to be their president. And our continuing concern was how we can empower women. The strategic decision which we took was not mine alone. The activists of Aero Foundation were all very commendable women, young women, very active, very forthright in their advocacy. And so we decided that we would create women's groups, leadership groups. So today we have women leaders groups in 50 districts of Pakistan. Each group is about 50 women, and they can come from any profession. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are nurses, some of them are paramedical staff, some are teachers, professors, self-employed women, home-based workers. And they work together as troubleshooters in these districts. They provide help to women in almost every sphere. Our own charter is about 3 elements: political empowerment, economic empowerment, and the third is to combat violence against women and girls. And these women leaders provide help to the women in these districts, for instance, to enroll as voters, for instance, to run for office, for instance, to try and help them to get national identity cards, because in Pakistan you can't do anything unless you have a CNIC. You can't really be empowered unless you have a CNIC. They help these women in distress who are the victims of domestic violence. They help these women's children to get education, to set up small businesses. And so this was really, one of the greatest achievements, I think, of my life. Also, we went in for advocacy against violence against women. And we took up the struggle to advocate, to lobby, to work with governments, to help draft laws. And I am very proud to say that the first province, the province which took the lead in this, was the province of Sindh. The first anti-domestic violence bill, act, in fact, it became an act, was adopted in Sindh a few years ago. It was a very proud day for all of us. That was followed by Balochistan, was the second province, then Punjab, and finally KP. So, because of the work that these young activists in Aero Foundation and also other organizations, not just us, put in, we were able to get these laws passed in all the provinces of Pakistan. So whereas you have, talked to me about my diplomatic work, we will talk about it later at the summer.
Sure.
But I consider this work really most important because it has empowered so many women.
No, definitely. I think that's probably my grandest mistake tonight is to not highlight that she is the president of Aero, which is such a thing. I was focusing just on your leadership in the international relations, and that's how I also know you very well in that. But definitely what she spoke about, not just Aero Foundation, but Aero Foundation supplies a lot of support to other organizations to do their work. And I know plenty of organizations that Aero Foundation has sponsored and provided funding to achieve those goals. So there's no doubt that Aero Foundation is very central to today's conversation and today's theme. Madam Tasneem, I'll turn to you, and with your years in experience, and Madam Masuma spoke about advocacy, and these are things that you're also working in relation with media, but also the promotion of gender sensitization and gender equity. And as you've probably faced some of these challenges in the media industry yourself personally, and some of that, is there any personal struggle or story that kind of defines that that we could actually take some lessons from that you'd like to share?
Thank you so much, and a very good evening and assalamu alaikum to everybody. I could actually write a thesis on that. I've been a journalist for over 40 years now. So UX, which is not UKS, it's UX Reflect.
UX, okay.
So that is an organization that I founded single-handedly in 1997, so it's going to be 25 years old now. The main reason was the kind of portrayal of women that was there in the print media at that time, because I used to read about 18 to 20 newspapers from all over Pakistan. And especially in the Urdu media, the kind of language that was used, the kind of connotations that were there, it got me thinking that there has to be a forum which needs to look at the way the media persons, the desk people, the reporters write about women. What do they think about women? So what I started to do is just without any funding, I started this organization. I used to read, cut and paste all these newspaper clippings, mark them each day with the newspaper's name and take them to the editors. I mean, it was a very tedious process. And I used to sit with them, argue with them, and a lot of times they would deny, plain cheat, it wasn't in our paper. And I would say, this is the date, this is the page, go and check. So that's how it started. And I started to talk about gender at a time when it wasn't even spoken about. Nobody talked about gender sensitization, nobody talked about gender sensitivity. Nobody talked about HIV and AIDS, which was the main area of trainings with the journalists. And it used to be all male environment, very few women. All male desks, all male reporters, even if in trainings there would be one or two ceremonial women sitting there. So from there till now, I think I've trained almost like thousands of journalists, thousands of media students all over the Pakistan, thousands of broadcasters, TV people, and yet I feel that each training for me is a challenge, because each time that I speak to people as a trainer, as an influencer, there are issues that they don't like to talk about. For example, I used to talk about why use honor-based terminologies for rape in Urdu. Because in Urdu we use Izzat Nurjana, Ismat Dari, all those things which are honor-based. Why just not use rape? We use telephone, television, everything. Rape is rape, it's a crime. So why do you have to link it with honor? Because it then becomes a more tedious job for people to reflect upon. So from there, a lot of people have picked up using honor rape as rape in Urdu broadcasts and in their reports. Lately, I've actually been talking about one slogan that people picked up, and even in today's newspaper, with Aurat March, with International Women's Day, it's Mera Jism Meri Mercy, my body, my right, my privilege. And how it's all related to free sex. And it takes me hours to explain to them that this is not a vulgar slogan, it's a very angry slogan. You have to feel the hurt that a woman has gone through, claiming that it is her body, not anybody else's, and it's her right over her own body. And I've also tried to relate it with a lot of abuses which women and other genders go through. For example, a 6 months old who goes through a rape, who has a right over her body? She does not. What about the women who are dug out of their graves and raped? Who's right? So talking to the media about these issues isn't been easy. You are up against men from district media who have really set to an extent misogynistic thoughts about women. You are up against a lot of patriarchal, regressive mindsets, and yet I have not actually fallen anyway. I have I would have been crushed to bits if I did not have nerves of steel. I could actually look at all the participants in the eyes and ask them, tell me if everything that I'm saying or anything that I'm saying is wrong. Just one thing. And they failed to do that. So I think that those challenges have been there. Producing radio productions, I mean, we've been doing that for a long time, producing digital stories. Bringing out voices of women who are unknown, unspoken. I mean, for example, during the COVID, domestic violence, like everywhere else in the world, had risen. Nobody actually talked about it.
Right.
So we did a whole study, we brought out reports, we did a lot of media monitoring, because media monitoring is something that we do every day. So up till now, from 1997 till today, we have everything that gets printed in the Pakistani media, all is stored with us. It's a huge database for anybody who would like to go through women in violence, health, education, all those things. I also got Pakistan included in the Global Media Monitoring Project, which is a prestigious project which is done every 5 years, where globally 120, 24, 25 countries monitor their media one day. The entire day is devoted to to the media. And 2010, I included Pakistan after a lot of back and forth, and this is the third time that we were included in the process. So I am very proud that Pakistan, because India was there, Bangladesh was there, Nepal, every country was there except for Pakistan. So that I think is a big achievement. So yeah, challenges are there, but achievements are also there. I mean, bringing out voices of unknown, unheard women. Recently we did a story about this woman pharmacologist who is running a business on a motorbike in Karachi, she's daughter Sana.
Right.
So our producers actually go and hunt for these unheard voices and bring them out. So yeah, I think change is there, and UX is doing its bit to bring out change.
Right, interesting. And I think you spoke about the narrative and preconceived biases that, in the behavioral change, and that's very important. Particularly, I really enjoyed when I was reading about UX and all that. The gender sensitization part, I think, is so important. Like you said, wo ek dard hai. That nara is not to be perceived in that light, but it's perceived on who's saying it, why they're saying it. There's a context of which that is being said, and I think that's get missed in translation. So when we talk about breaking barriers, clearly, Dr. Sara Qureshi, I think you have, as they say, there is no glass ceiling because you've gone to the skies already. With what you have done and with your company, what you're establishing there. And I know this field has always been, preconceived bias that's been associated with it, that it's just males that are in this, and that's been a challenge. And I'm pretty sure that has been probably something you struggled with. So perhaps you could shed some light on that experience and that struggle in this particular area and field that you went through. That would be a lesson for us to take.
Okay, thank you very much. I do agree that, for me, challenges have been probably all over the spectrum. You see, firstly, developing the technology, which is something that is so deeply tech-intensive and very precision-oriented. So that in itself is a challenge, and it's an industry which is, underrepresented by women all over the world. In both terms of leadership as well as professionalism. So that was the challenge that I started with. And then developing something like that in Pakistan was another challenge because, we don't have a civil aerospace in Pakistan. All the aviation industry is either limited to the defense domain, which is highly classified, or to airline operations. So when I set up this first research and development company on jet engines, we didn't really have an ecosystem to work with. Secondly, because the entire industry all over the world, the aviation industry is very monopolized and very controlled. it's a regulated industry. When you talk about the environment, there are vested interests of bigger companies, and because there are some big companies controlling the industry, so sometimes this kind of work is not very welcomed, and it's dismissed very casually, though despite the fact that I've rigored through a PhD on the subject, even sometimes when I talk about it, and aviation-induced global warming is backed by thousands of peer-reviewed journals and research. So yet, there are people within the industry, very senior people who are dismissing that. So fighting that too, and but I believe that there have been contributions from the women in all domains, and sometimes it's just that the contribution is there, but it's not really highlighted. Because if I look at my own company, we are the first company, or I would say we are global first movers in the world developing an environmentally safe content-free aero engine. I mean, there are people around the world are working in research domains, but there is no such company. And there's no, I would say that there is not even a man in the world who is doing what I am doing, and that too from Pakistan. I'm also an inventor of a supersonic jet engine, and that is among a few names in recorded history where women inventors of jet engine. I mean, I don't know what so when you talk about breaking the bias, I think that's there, and what I highlight always is that professions must always be gender neutral. We all face challenges within our professions, and being a woman should not be one of those challenges.
Right.
So that's my take on this. And other than that, I can very well relate to what our other esteemed panel members have talked about in our society, and I do agree that we do really need to, our society needs to be a little more sensitive. What is generally missing is not just women are very capable, but it's the attitude they get, and they don't get the right encouragement, and and that's why they don't get the confidence of their own identity or recognition. And it's not just, the talent, the capability is always there. What is missing is the supportive attitude or the encouragement from the society. And then we come from, we are a society where abuse and mental health issues are both taboo. So there's I mean, you would know this better, but we do know that there are laws that exist to protect women, but there is always a social pressure not to exercise that. So I think we all need to have more of some deep searching our social issues and the way women are pressurized into fitting into some very stereotyped roles. Like there's always a pressure to be a good mother, a good wife, a good daughter. But then what we miss out is that a woman is a human being.
Right.
She is an individual. She can have likes and dislikes. She can have dreams. She can have passions. There are things she wants to pursue. I mean, that's the point. What we are really missing as a society. And I always, when I'm asked to give out a message to women, I always tell them that everything starts with self-recognition. You must identify what you want to do, what your passion is, what your dreams are, and take the initiative there. And then the role of the society and your family that comes in. And that's generally all we need. And there's one saying that I could very well relate to. They say it's in Urdu, just
No, please.
They say कि औरत को काम नहीं थकाता, रवैये थका देते हैं. And that's something that I've also felt. It's not just, you always you move along, you face challenges, given that you have the right support from the people around you.
Thank you. It's amazing. एक तो एक gender barrier की भी आपने बात की और scientific barrier की भी इसके अंदर आपने साथ के that was people doubting, oh, this is not possible. So that was like a double barriers that you were breaking in that. Dr. Masuma, I want to come back to you and to talk about some of the things which she just mentioned about behind the scenes, this supportive role, and often at time women not getting recognition. The other day I was reading the paper, the Sunday paper, and I noted that your memoir is coming out March 10th, I believe, in London. I think you're going to do the opening for there. And I was reading the story in there about your struggle and support. And Dr. Qureshi just mentioned about how women play this role of the mother and the wife and all that. And it's not just empowerment for themselves, but actually they empower others. Can you talk a little bit about that? How women in that role, particularly your personal experience, I think was very moving when I read that, and how you were empowering not only your husband but other people in that time period through your assistance. And often at times that gets missed out in the narrative. And if you could talk a little bit about that, I think that would be really nice to share.
Well, my memoir, which is called Pakistan in an Age of Turbulence, is expected to be released by my publishers. My publishers are the United Kingdom, Pen and Sword Books. They say it will be released on the 10th of March, but certainly in the month of March. When I wrote that memoir, I had called it The Times in Which I Lived. But after my publishers read the text, they found so much turbulence in Pakistan that they decided to call it Pakistan in an Age of Turbulence, and I think that title will also sell more for them. They are publishers, they want to sell. I have written the story of my life, but it is also a story of the political history of Pakistan, as I saw it through the lens of my husband's struggle. He was one of the leaders of the movement for restoration of democracy. He was very active. He was in fact accused number one in the dictatorship of Ayub Khan. He was the person who led the anti-Ayub movement in the streets of Karachi. So my entire life with him was influenced by the fact that he was either in and out of prison, or he was externed, he was thrown out of Karachi, or that he was always under scrutiny, and so was I. And so because of his activism and because of his commitment and because of his ideals, my career was also always under scrutiny. And I was pushed around, in fact, as much as he was pushed around. And whatever I may have achieved in life, I owe greatly to my family. And as my colleague here also said, family support is very important, because women achieve when they are supported from the family. Not that those who are not supported don't achieve. They can also achieve, but family support means a great deal. And my late husband Fateh was a man of great vision, great tolerance. Sometimes men feel threatened by their wives' success. Very often that happens. But I always say that my struggle was equally his struggle for me. And I don't think that I would have acquired what you call leadership qualities, or I could have been successful if it hadn't been for his support all along, his vision, his decency. Now, in this memoir, I have therefore written about the politics of Pakistan through the lens of his struggle. But I've also done a lot of academic research for it. And it is all backed up with a lot of footnotes and research. And what can I, at that time you have to, when your husband is in prison or your brother is in prison or any of your relatives is in prison because of their idealism, you have to hold the family together. And the worst sufferers are the children. Because you don't have time for them. And I wish in retrospect that I had spent more time with them and explained more things to them, which at that time I didn't have the opportunity to do because I was so busy running from pillar to post. And my own career was also influenced by that because I was also thrown out of Karachi. And I had to leave my children with my mother, and I had to leave my husband in the prison. So as Dawn rightly said, the fight for democracy had a great personal cost. But I was not the only one, Muaz.
No.
There were many, many people like me. Thousands of people were arrested. Thousands of women had to fight again. These were very distressing times. So yes, we tried to support one another also. I mean, the women of political prisoners, the wives of political prisoners also supported one another. We also supported each other's children. That kind of help we did give. But I am so grateful, very, very grateful, that ordinary people supported us. Not the elite, not my neighbors, not my colleagues, not my friends. For them I was a liability. But the ordinary people of my neighborhood, the chowkidar in the house next to mine, the people in Gharib Nawaz Hotel where I used to buy food when I was too tired to cook, because I had to take food to my husband every single day as is shown in the memoir, the excerpt that was being published. They were kind people. They are the people who, in a sense, lifted my morale. So in a way, it was a kind of collaborative effort. We all tried to stand with one another. And those were distressing times, but God gives you, I don't know from where, but God gives you a lot of courage.
And earlier, Tasneem, that was very moving, but you mentioned about nerves of steel and this strength. And also Dr. Masuma, she spoke about this idea of coming together and helping each other, men and women. And I know media's current role in journalism, sometimes we see it promotes this exclusivity and the divide, and it just further brings the conflict between the sexes. Or do you feel that sometimes media is playing a more constructive role in bringing that together and bringing that gender equity equation to light? How do you feel about that, and where the media is playing a role in bringing this inclusivity about working together, supporting each other? Is it increasing the divide, and is that something that's going to really achieve gender equity, or is it something that's bringing people together? What are your thoughts around that? I mean, you studied this for 25 years, so.
Well, I wish media was inclusive. It's not, at least not here, and I think globally as well. If I talk about Pakistan, it's the media at the moment is so politicized and so polarized that you can't talk about gender, and I mean all genders, not just men and women, I mean trans people as well. You can't actually discuss a lot of things which ought to be discussed on the media, but every evening when I switch on the TV and I switch on surf the channels, mundane kind of political debates which lead nowhere,
right,
which create more chaos, a lot of speculations, a lot of gossips, a lot of fighting, even physical fights, bad kind of language. So the kind of inclusiveness that you're talking about, it's not there that we could see. Print media, yes, to a certain extent. You do see, especially in English media, you do see women and men both being there. You do see editorials on issues that should be there, that talk about inclusivity. But if we look at the structure of the media houses, the newsrooms, it's still a very male-dominated area. You see a lot of girls, females passing out from universities as media students, as mass comm students. Almost like 70% to 60% of them are girls or females. But you don't see them in the newsrooms, you don't see them as reporters, you don't see them as sub-editors, you don't see them as editors. There isn't any woman editor at the moment in Pakistan, in the English newspaper. We've had only Haludi at one time. That was about it.
Right.
So we lack that inclusiveness in our media, outside the media, and what could bring them together is something that is still not being brought out on the table. I've actually been struggling, I've been fighting, I've been after these male editors, that whenever there is a women's issue, it's always the third editorial. It's never the first. And it's mostly when a woman gets raped that an editorial is there. So why does a woman have to be raped to be there in the editorial? Why can't they do an editorial on any aspect of womanhood or gender aspects, irrespective of whether it's a current issue or not, whether it's happening or not? I mean, that is what journalism is all about. It's not just what's happening today, it's also what happened yesterday or what may happen tomorrow. So we are actually not very far-sighted. We are not looking at, and I do try to introduce concepts like constructive journalism, which people say it's a PR journalism, so don't talk to us about it. Constructive journalism actually takes you away from negativity and it brings in a lot of positivity, which is what's needed at the moment in the media. You need to hear about normal people. We don't hear their stories. What we hear is just he says, she says statements, and that's it. So I think the inclusiveness is still a far dream, and I don't see it happening in the near future, and especially in the days to come, I don't see it happening.
Oh, that's very sad to note, and I think that there needs to be a lot more work. But I'm very glad that Dr. Sara Qureshi at least has broken the barrier in her field. But I think always you kind of have this feeling that you're the loner out there, that this is, there's no other woman, has gone here. And I wish SSP Shahla Qureshi would be here too, because she also would have shared about this, her struggle in the Sindh police, and how she's like, there's been no one ahead of her who's ever done this. Being that first one in that and kind of pushing through, that's got to have developed not only nerves of steel, as Tasneem Sahiba mentioned, but also it's probably developed some skill sets. And I know as an engineer you have a very analytical mind, so you were able to identify and construct and achieve a targeted goal. What skills this struggle and during this time period, as that woman who's breaking these barriers, that you got, that built your confidence to achieve what you have today? What would you share with young women today? What would be that skill set that you developed in this challenge to build that confidence?
Okay, yes, as our respected panel member said, you need to have the skill. So I think one of the important elements is obviously persistence. Well, self-esteem, confidence. You have to be very determined. You have to be very sure of yourself. There are times, you don't find support all the time, you don't find encouragement all the time, but you have to have faith in yourself. And one thing that I think helped me, what I practiced at an early age, was that you see, once you enter a practical life, that there are many roles that you have to juggle with, as I mentioned, that that we have our societal roles and we have to fulfill them. As a wife, as a mother, and as a homemaker as well. So I think having a dynamic personality, or trying to develop a dynamic personality from the beginning, to be more involved with extracurricular activities, co-curricular activities, to be good at multitasking. That's what something that helped me later in life, because there's a time when you can be very focused and very dedicated to a single ambition or a cause, if you're a student or even if you're working, but then there comes a time when you need to prioritize and you need to manage a lot of roles, because I experienced that. I did my PhD and my daughter was born during my PhD. So, doing this kind of cutting edge research with a very young child, and there were times when I was very deeply engrossed in making some discovery, and she would just wake up, and so there was a mental interrupt. So that's when I learned to value time and to make the best use of it. And so that's my advice to young girls, that when you have the time, when you have the opportunity, make the best use of it. Because later in life, sometimes you really you really have to struggle with your priorities. As Dr. Masuma also said that, she mentioned her children. So we all have to deal with these things, and then there is something I think all women can relate to, is a mom guilt. That we always feel that maybe we didn't whatever time we are giving our children, or that women are even in the society, that they're given these kind of guilt trips by a lot of people, but generally that's what I would say, to focus on developing a multitasking personality, a dynamic personality, and to value time and opportunities.
All right, so balancing time management, very nice. Perseverance, and of course balancing mom guilt, which I agree with you. Partly, it definitely is a society, particularly our society, familial pressures. But I get a sense of feeling, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that sometimes is an internal element as well. I think it's natural that a mother has, and how Dr. Masuma spoke on it. Dr. Masuma, we do have with us a lot of young women here in the crowd who, aspiring into the field of law and politics and governance. And of course, you've been there, you've done this, and mashallah, you have a very accomplished career. And you face diverse series of challenges. What would be something you would share with young women tonight in the journey of your life? What would be that one skill or one thing that they could hold on to build that confidence for what pathway they choose? If they choose to be an aerospace engineer, or if they go into international affairs, or they become into the media, what would be something that you would share with them?
You mean what element of...
What element or one skill set that you think was extremely important that they could hold on to build that confidence?
In the first place, I'd like to say that I don't take a dim view of the progress of women in this country. It is not true. Mm-hmm. I remember a time when I was probably the only woman in a gathering of 200 men when I started my career. And now you can see the sea change. Mm-hmm. And you see women, young women, innovative women, women with a great deal of perseverance in various fields, and they are there in the public domain when they were not there a few decades ago. So to say that the women of Pakistan are, suffering all the time is a claim I don't, accept. I've seen the change, and I've seen how well they have done. Yes, there are terrible incidents of all kinds of cruelty and brutality that are reported in the media every day. But that doesn't mean that there has been no progress. I would say that the first thing is to be clear about what one wants to do. Sometimes, we go into a profession or we make achievements just willy-nilly. We haven't really chosen a definite path, it just happens. Like in the government, there is a fixed career path. You have to go up those ladders, you go up those ladders to reach the top, or you don't.
Right.
But at other times, you can really choose. You can choose to be a lawyer, you can choose to be a doctor, like so many women want to be doctors. So many women are in the medical profession that it is sometimes sarcastically said that there should be a quota for men.
Mm-hmm.
So many women have been successful in medicine and they take all the seats. On merit, they come into these medical colleges, much to the disadvantage of the women and the men who want to get involved in them. So the first thing is to decide what you have to do. You want to be a lawyer, you want to be a doctor, you want to be an aerospace engineer, you want to be a great journalist like my colleague over here. You have to first decide. The other thing is then you have to persevere. You have to keep on that straight path. And that is very difficult because all kinds of burdens come your way. Your parents want you to get married. Your husband doesn't want you to work. All kinds of burdens come across your career. So you have to persevere. And sometimes it is very difficult to get over the biases of your family members or even your husband or your close relatives. Because in our culture, those relatives also have a lot to say about what you have to do and what you don't have to do. So there is that perseverance aspect. And the third thing I think is, that there should be no arrogance about one's achievement. Because women are successful in so many fields, Karachi especially. In the big cities, they are more prominent and visible in their success. Not so much in the rural areas. But even in the rural areas, there are women entrepreneurs, there are women innovators, there are women who break barriers, who take challenges. We don't always hear about that.
Right.
So I would say that there are these elements which will help you towards a career path. So don't be arrogant and be grateful that you have had this opportunity to achieve.
Very nice. Thank you. And this is an open question to all panelists, and as a winding thought, as we connect back to London here, I would just like your thoughts and perspective on what advice would you share with men, particularly young men who are here as well. And you said about, just like you mentioned that, people haven't heard about it. So it's not about, what is the role that men can be in this journey for women empowerment, for the women of their home, for the women that they meet in their schools and in their workplaces. What can they do today, particularly in today's, and this day is important, I feel, for them as well, to understand this, and there's a role for them here. So I'd like that if you could share something, and I think that voice needs to be heard, that what are women really wanting that young men and men take on. So if we could, ma'am, if you want to.
What we should not do is to turn this into a women against men program.
Yeah.
Which some of the conservative forces in our country do. They think that if women achieve, it is somehow something against men. We should not let that turn into a women against men or men against women program. The other thing is that, in my own experience, when we work in the field through our foundation, the collaboration and support which we get from our men colleagues have opened many, many doors for us. Because there were areas in the northern areas especially, and in the tribal areas where we worked with great difficulty, where women could not open doors. It was our men colleagues who helped us to open those doors, to reach out even to the women in those areas. We had to go through the men. And their support has been something that we can't value enough. So, every woman who has achieved has really, I think, had the support of some man or the other in her life. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is the society in which we live, and this is the society in all parts of the world. It is not just restricted to Pakistan. This is what I would say about this fighting for women's rights in Pakistan.
Dr. Qureshi?
Okay, yes, I would like to acknowledge the same, and I would say that I feel blessed that I've had a very supportive man in my life. As a child, as a girl, my father, my grandfather, I've always found them very encouraging, very supportive. Then when I went into the university, because it was such a male-dominated field, there were only male professors and teachers, and so my teachers, my PhD professor, my research supervisor, my mentors during my entrepreneurship journey. So I do acknowledge that, and that really makes a difference. Secondly, my message would be to men would be that, as Dr. Masuma said, that this is not a competition. So you need to just start by taking pride in the women around you, in their achievements. Their achievements are actually your achievements. That's how we grow. When we help each other grow, we all grow together. So that's the first step. If you see a woman who's trying hard, or if she's achieved something, do take pride in her. And then secondly, of course, if you can, in the next step, if you can encourage her more, or if you can motivate a woman, or help her recognize her passions, or follow her dreams, that's really amazing. And I think that's how life is. As we say, that success is always teamwork. We grow by supporting each other, and also by keeping professions gender neutral. We don't need to have these gender biases in professions. When you are dealing with one of your colleagues, you should always think that it's just another profession, and your judgment should be based on professional merit, and it should not be based on gender.
Tasneem?
I just would like to narrate a very personal story, a very short one. I got a scholarship for my second master's right after I got married, and I left for the US 4 months after I got married. And everybody was taunting my husband that, look, your wife ran away just after 4 months. So he had to pay that. And I think I gave him credit for sort of, having gone through all kinds of taunts and sarcasm. But without his support, I wouldn't have done my second master's. So I owe it to him. And since we both are journalists, so we understand the push and pull of the profession. For men, I have a very favorite quote. It's a nazm actually. Keshwanahi ki nazm mein it's like pehla misra, mere dost bano, mere dost bano. And that's what I believe in. All my colleagues from university days, from my teen days, from my journalism days, till now they're all my friends. And I enjoy their friendship, and I think that's really valuable. For young females, women, I would say that be vocal, be proactive, and be fearless. Just don't fear anybody. You are what you are, and
No, please.
I want to say, I want to acknowledge that all the decisions about my career were taken by men. There were no women decision makers in my career. The one exception was Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, who appointed me ambassador. But apart from that, from the lowest stage right up to the top, it was the men who recognized it. It was the men who made decisions to promote me.
Right.
There were hardly any women in any prominent position, way down below my own grade.
No, I think that's very important, and I think a good message that creating the space and environment where men can lend that support, and I think that's where the change can truly come. So their role is extremely important. I'll just excuse myself and connect to London here. They just messaged me, so we will be connecting and sharing our thoughts. Maheen, if you have... Okay.
Some actions. The young people in the room today, they spoke about the need for role models. You can't be what you can't see. We talked about lifting and spotlighting the fantastic work that is being done, alongside looking at our media, how do we represent women more broadly and how do we really showcase fantastic work that they're doing. A very final point was made about the need for male allyship, and especially if those in positions of leadership, high-profile positions of political leaders, calling on them to address some of their own biases and really uplift women from all backgrounds.
Thank you very much, Peter. And is Karachi, can you hear us, Karachi? Muaz?
Yes.
And he has seen her Hello, Muaz?
Hello, Elizabeth. Apologies.
Yes, sorry. Can you hear me now? Hello?
With you, so getting back to our we'll try to get again to Karachi.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my best here to summarise for my panel discussion, which was very rich, and actually some points that we made resonated with some of the things I've just been hearing right now, so I'll try not to repeat where possible. A very good discussion. We talked about the home and the home being the start of everything, and having positive mother role models in the home, supported by a positive father role model, was extremely important for setting a nurturing environment for young men and young women. We talked around the systemic issues that are related with working structures. So working women are disadvantaged. The system doesn't allow them to necessarily get the right jobs in the right places when they need that. The structures around childcare support, as we know, are not as good as they might be. And then once in the workplace, there are further barriers that sort of exist that just either stop a woman from working the way she wants, or indeed prevent her from, in fact, developing her own career path. And in that context, language was felt to be very important. So words like bossy and ambitious, which are used to downplay women's characteristics, should be replaced with more positive sounding words that more properly used within the male context. The financial disparity that women have compared to men is also seen to be something that needs to be tackled, and the barrier is so large it does stop women from becoming empowered. Women should help other women by amplifying women's voices. So something that came up in last year's plan about needing a ladder down behind you was essentially sort of reiterated this time round. We each have a responsibility to amplify the voices of the women and use all tools and opportunities that we have at our discretion to enable that to happen. The importance for women to feel and be authentic, so to lead in a way that's natural for them, dress in a way that makes them feel comfortable, speak using words that make them feel if they're properly communicating, etc. Moving on, women tend to, in terms of enabling young women to step into leadership space, confidence was something that we feel needs to be nurtured at a young age, and to move away from this ideal that girls and women need to be perfectionists in order to be successful and to have confidence. There's a lot around image, the image of women in social media, the image of women around the place, and that those images need to better reflect the positive role models that we want to be and see. We also recognise that the pandemic, whilst it has been a terrible journey for most people, with every journey there's also positive, and so there should be and there are opportunities for young women and women to step into spaces and make them their own. I think that probably covers most of the main points from you.
A very rich conversation. Thank you very much, Max. And I think that that is now with us. So, how
did that, and in fact, the panel was varied. One person I didn't mention earlier was Bianca McConey, who was a young journalist who recently came through the apprenticeship here, and Bianca is early 20s. And it was interesting that the parallels between her view and those of other more senior journalists who were also on the panel. And they agreed that it's getting better, but Avianca was particularly saying she thought that there was a lack of rapport between some of the women, with those with different skills and backgrounds, and that if they interacted more and gave support. And it's interesting what was said by some of the other panelists about mentors and mentoring, which is obviously something that you, Elizabeth, are very keen on pushing. This actually helped to bridge the gap. The other point was that I heard one of the other panelists saying was listening, and everybody agreed that listening is actually one of the most important things, and listening and giving space and creating opportunities for women, particularly after children. That's returning to the industry, coming back at the same level. And that was another important point. And that went in media, but also outside of media, and in politics. And many of those around the panel said they wouldn't go into politics because of the social media criticism of women, particularly women of colour, and that the social media took a lot of blame for the antagonism and actually verbal assault almost. And this was felt very strongly by all ages, by the younger and the more mature. So social media still needs to get its act together. But the last word was be aware of the danger of complacency, because while things have increased, there is particularly more room for improvement. And don't be complacent. The fact that there are now women editors of several national newspapers, there's still a dearth of women executives, according to the panel that we have here.
Thank you, Dad. Well, social media, unfortunately, is very difficult to control and to contain. There needs to be some self-regulation there, something that owners need to be more serious into, because there's serious threat to our democracy. But maybe, I think we all of us expect to see more representation, more diversity of voices in media. Thank you so much for this insight. And moving on now to Karachi.
Yes, hello, can you hear me? Yes, thank you, Elizabeth. Well, some of the themes that we discussed were actually very similar, particularly this last theme that was shared by London's panel, particularly on media and media representation, that we don't have women editors within our panel at the different news organizations. So as such, that was a key point that was mentioned. In respect to media, there's also a reference to is it increasing the divide or bringing people together, regardless of gender? And we kind of spoke a little bit about the element of inclusivity. And so that was something, and of course gender sensitization was a key area that was discussed, that often at times when people may perceive something, particularly in language, there's a very famous slogan that's very popular in Pakistan when it comes to Women's Day by Aurat March, that's called Mera Jism Meri Marzi, which means my body, my choice. And sometimes these words are misinterpreted, as one of our panelists, Tasneem, Ahmar said that this actually sometimes gets misunderstood to mean something like free sex, which actually in reality it actually is a place of anger, and there's a lot of back history to this that oftentimes that people don't sensitize themselves to. There was a discussion with Dr. Qureshi about breaking barriers that have never been broken. And not only that, the scientific barriers, as she works in science and development of jet engines, and the challenges of being the only women on that. And she shared some certain skill sets that are important for young women to kind of take away from them, to be persistent, have self-esteem, faith in themselves, fulfill the societal roles, but get a value time and make good use of the opportunities. There was a discussion that was interesting because we kind of went back to a lot of stories that was shared. And there was something that was discussed, the mom guilt. And that's often at times how women are in career, and sometimes that's partly from society, and sometimes that is actually built within. Dr. Masuma shared a very moving story about her experience, not only leading Aero Foundation, which is the leading women's rights foundation in Pakistan, in various political, economic, and against empowerment, but also violence against women. So she spoke about how women, didn't even have a right to vote in some of the rural areas here in Pakistan. And I know some of the capitals may not realize that as an issue that they may be facing. But the reality is in the different geographic spaces where we are, there's different challenges for that. What can be done? Of course, education is a must for everybody, for a cause, and any other influences such as politics or religion. The world is changing fast, but people are neglected in observations of change. Women education is a key priority. We also spoke about how profession and career should be gender neutral. And then how the capacity of women is all there, but it's the right attitude and the encouragement that's missing. And what's really interesting is towards the end we had a discussion on inclusivity and how men can play a role. Dr. Masuma shared about her experience. She not only had some advice for the young women where she said that persistence and perseverance is key, and being very grateful and not being arrogant. And often at times that we sometimes forget that we are in a society that has men and women. And so one of the key things that was spoken about how men are providing these spaces and support. And that's a role that young men and men who are in the audience and those listening can really take to create those spaces to provide that support. So that's it. Pretty much a lot of the same themes that you have echoed. And I guess I'll leave it back to you.
Ideas and thoughts and concerns. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you saying hello to all your panelists. In Karachi and finally, I was Dubai. I see that Leonor is ready to connect with us now. Hello, Leonor. So, welcome to Dubai. We have actually.
Do you want us to go first in Zagreb, or do you want to Dubai first?
Let's go with Dubai first, and then we go with you. Thank you. Helen, all ears. Is Dubai listening? Can you hear us? Hello, Dubai?
Yeah, okay, so some of the key things that we talked about in Dubai was actually the most recent legislation and the changes in the laws in the UAE that do protect women and give women certain privileges or what we consider rights, such as equal pay and paternity and maternity leave and things like that. We also talked about NGOs and civil society organizations and how they can support the role of women and women empowerment at all levels. So we were questioned about, are we living in a bubble talking about women empowerment when there are people in disadvantaged areas, that this is not even a choice for them. And so we discussed the impact that NGOs and civil society organizations can have. We were talking about empathy and emotional intelligence as keys for leadership, and this is a strength that women have that we can really capitalize on. Being unapologetic, and they said that they talked about the same thing in Ahmar, but being unapologetic and taking the time to have a life as well as work. I'm going to just quickly highlight some of the key findings from different panelists. Caroline was talking about women needing to know their rights to be able to challenge the issues that they are facing. Suzanne was talking about the women going forward, how you can be professionally talented as well as a mom, and juggling but being unapologetic, like we said earlier. Diana was talking as a lawyer from the legislative areas that have changed in the UAE, but also the GCC being very progressive with the rules around empowerment and employment laws. And then we have Roxanne, who told us a bit about sending engineering in Poland, but we think this is just a Middle Eastern issue, but actually it is a global issue. and especially when she was working in finance and biases when it comes to specific industries. Fatma, who is a cybersecurity specialist, was talking about her passion for technology and the fact that she needed to prove herself as a woman in a man's world. The overriding theme was very similar to everyone else all around the world, and we talked about the cultural biases that are intrinsically built in us from a very young age, but also the need for us to continue to change the conversation. And whether we think it's a small bubble, it's actually got a ripple effect on everyone everywhere. Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Helen. And let's go with Zara. And then we can back to the room here.
Okay. Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you. So we had a very rich conversation here, and we could have gone on for hours and hours and hours. It was a very interesting conversation. I think we can group our we were very similar in some of our conclusions, and I think we can group them into a couple of things. I think the importance of having role models was stressed. And role models are not just role models in society. Croatia does need more female leaders, women in senior roles, but also parents, having family who will support us, both girls and boys, in following our dreams. We talked about stereotypes and why they are true but they're not complete. I think that was a fantastic phrase that was used. And we talked about how we should show our achievements as women and share them, and we shouldn't be held back by the biases of society in order to be able to do what we want to do. We talked a lot about also about it being both about girls and boys and about mothers having a role to play in how they bring up their sons, and fathers and how they bring up their sons. So it is a conversation for all of us. We did, particularly in Croatia, sort of talk about the difficulties facing women who become mothers, and juggling that, sort of balancing that between having a family, bringing up a family, and having a career, and particularly for mothers that may have children with special needs, how difficult that is, and how they are judged by society and often by their peers, and why that shouldn't be the case. And obviously we talked about education, and especially social and emotional learning, the need to show emotions, to have empathy, to be able to self-care, activism. I like the phrase activism is self-care, and empower young girls to have that self-esteem, and that has to start at an early age. But we did say it has to be both boys and girls, it has to be a conversation by both. So thank you very much for allowing us to take part.
And yes, it has been all gender conversation actually, and we're coming back to this room. Thank you to all Sindhis for all participation and supporting Athena40 and these conversations, and the rich insights that we have shared with the right people and the white paper. And it really is a phenomenon that there's a lot of you in. I know you have to go because we need to pick up a little one, yes? Yes, but thank you so much for having me. Extremely special, and she said it worked yesterday, so I didn't have to come back and see her, but looking forward to continuing the conversation, especially on the topic of work-life balance. That I've quite a bit thinking on that, so I look forward to continuing the conversation. And then thank you so much. What's her name? Your daughter's name? Sophie. Lovely. So we're celebrating Sophie. Well, she's the future. Thank you so much, and that's what creates a better future for the next generation. Thank you so much. Thank you for putting together such a wonderful event. I'm so grateful. I have a voice to be part of the conversation. So I'm grateful and thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody, for your patience as well. We will conclude today's session. Again, I apologize for all the technical, and hopefully as technology improves, we'll be much better at this. And hopefully maybe have a physical session. I think there's time that, maybe Athena40 should consider that as well. I know it's pretty late, we've gone a little bit over, but I would like to invite Ambassador Attiya to please present a token of appreciation to each of our panelists. As just a kind token that you have come and given us your valuable time, your valuable voice. I think particularly for the young women, I think that's important. And we are going to have a recording of this in which we will share with you as well, which then you can later on share with others. So please, Ambassador Attiya, if you may, and Dr. Masuma Hasan, please.
Thank you so much.
ये भी कह रहा था करना चाहिए
ग्रुप भी लेना है
हाँ हाँ ग्रुप पे अभी लेंगे
गिफ्ट भी लेना
Dr. Sarah Qureshi. So much going on, but amazing jet. The jets. I didn't know about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last time, Miss Tasneem.
Good for you.
Of course, we conducting research as well. Ma'am Attiya, I have something to present to you as well.
Oh, thank you.
Token of appreciation.
That's really lovely.
It's very important. It's Ziauddin after the report, so I think this is really nice that we were able to be part of the global conversation still. And I know you're like, after the dialogue, and I'm glad that you were able to
But thank you so much.
And that was the theme of this.
Thanks to all the students who came. And I would love to have just one or two questions. At least you have a brilliant panel here. अगर एक या दो सवाल बस ताकि आप लोग भी भागने होंगे भागने को जा रहे होंगे but एक आध सवाल कर लें ताकि
I think they wanted to, so there's one, two questions.
At least
okay, Sana, please.
Insight.
Go ahead.
Yes, I heard about the humanity talking about the principle of inclusivity, gender balance, and the principle of inclusivity. One of the main principles of it is about protection of child rights. I want these all things compelled me to talk about the recent tragic incident that one father from the Myanmar killed her daughter because he was wishing for the son. So why not we are giving the respect towards the humanity? Before considering it as a violence against women, I would like to consider it as a violence against humanity. Because Masuma Hasan said that it's not, that's not created against men against women and women against men. So it's all about the humanity. We are lagging behind because we are forgetting the humanity.
You're right, but is there a question you want to ask?
Yes, ma'am. I would like to ask that why we are still lagging behind, why our state is failing to implement all the laws that protect the child, that even Article 9 that talks about the right to life, that is bedrock for all other rights.
You know, you are absolutely right, because we cannot talk about the rights for women without talking about the rights for the child. You are very right. And I agree with you. But you know, there's so much prejudice in our society, and we have to go a long way to fight it. This incident was so horrifying that a man just strangled a newborn child just because the child was not male. It's like gender selection in some countries, where they try to find out before the child is born whether it is a male or a female. And if it is a female, then they want the woman to abort that child. That happens a great deal in India. Because now we have this technology, ultrasound, you find out is the child going to be male or female, and if it is female, then they compare the woman to abort the child. So these, unfortunately, these prejudices exist in many developing countries, even in semi-developing countries, even in some developing countries, developed countries. There are these prejudices, and you are right, we have to fight it in the name of humanity. I agree with you.
I would just like to add to this.
Please.
It's on.
It's on.
It's on? I think.
Give it a second.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, you are right, आपने जो बात की है ना humanity की, I think that's where it all starts, and it starts with, the stronger party oppressing the weaker party. That's how it is. So it's sometimes it's women, sometimes it's children. So that's when Dr. Masuma said that the most important thing is to empower everybody. That's when we talk about women empowerment, as she mentioned, empowerment at grassroots level, getting them ID cards and economic empowerment. So it's like that's where it should start. Everybody should be empowered. And then one of the empowerment, as you're all students of law, is that there should be a law to protect everybody. There should be laws to protect women, to protect children. And sometimes the oppressor takes the liberty because they think they can get away with it. In some of the more developed societies where laws are stronger, some of these problems don't exist because they know that they would be, answerable to the law. So if you're all students of law, then it's your job to make it stronger and to implement it in the society.
I'd just like to add something.
Sure.
These times of social media, you know how extensive and aggressive kind of a campaign we ran for No Muqaddam, and how much pressure we built, and that is one reason that we got justice, whatever, but that is your tool now. If this man killed his 6 days old baby girl, this should be trending, and it's in your hands. It's in the hands of young people, because they are the ones who use social media the most. So make it a trend. Make the government realize that this man needs to be punished. Laws are there. Implementation is the problem. And it will not be implemented until there is a voice. There is a huge voice and there is some kind of pressure. So build the pressure, use the social media for some good aspects. Not just for trolling, not just for memes. Good, use it for some good. Thank you.